Young girl disappears from New York fishing spot. Date April 4, 2001. New York Daily Bulletin. New York City. A 13-year-old girl named Maria, described as a bright, well-mannered, and cheerful young student, has gone missing from a popular fishing spot along the New York City waterfront. According to eyewitnesses, Maria was last seen on the afternoon of April 4, 2001, enjoying a calm day by the water. She was dressed casually, wearing a light outfit suitable for the weather, and carried a small handbag accessorized for fishing, a familiar sight for locals who often saw her there with family and friends. Maria is described as having a cute, charming face and a gentle personality. Neighbors and classmates recall her as polite, intelligent, and full of curiosity. A young girl who loved outdoor activities and often helped others with a smile. Authorities were alerted shortly after her disappearance, when her belongings were found unattended near the dock. Despite extensive search efforts by police and volunteers, no immediate leads have surfaced regarding her whereabouts. Local authorities urge anyone with information about Maria's disappearance to contact the NYPD Missing Persons Unit. The community remains hopeful as family and friends continue their vigil, praying for her safe return. "She's a wonderful girl. Everyone loves her," said one neighbor tearfully. "We just want her home." As the investigation continues, the city watches with heavy hearts, united in the search for Maria, the young girl whose sudden disappearance has left an unsettling silence by the waterside. It's been 3 days since 13-year-old Maria vanished from the fishing spot near the Hudson River, and the mystery only deepens. Despite relentless efforts from the New York Police Department, search and rescue teams, and local volunteers, no confirmed sightings of the missing girl have been reported. Investigators have now expanded their search radius, combing through nearby parks, docks, and wooded areas along the riverbanks. Drones, boats, and canine units have been deployed in hopes of uncovering any trace of Maria. Detective Laura Jennings, who is leading the investigation, stated in a press briefing this morning, "We're treating this as a high-priority missing person case. Every minute matters. We're following all leads, no matter how small." According to early reports, Maria was known to visit the fishing area often, sometimes accompanied by her father or friends. On the day she disappeared, however, she was reportedly alone, enjoying a quiet afternoon by the water. Her handbag and fishing gear were found neatly placed on a bench, with no signs of struggle nearby. Locals have described seeing a white van parked in the area around the time Maria went missing, though authorities have not confirmed any direct connection. The community response has been overwhelming. Flyers bearing Maria's smiling face have been distributed across the city, and social media pages dedicated to finding her have begun circulating rapidly, bringing together strangers united in concern. At a small candlelight vigil held last night, Maria's mother spoke softly through tears. A local fisherman, Daniel Russo, who often frequents the area, came forward late Monday evening. Russo claims that around 4:30 p.m. on April 4th, the day Maria disappeared, he noticed a young girl matching Maria's description speaking to an unknown man near the dock. According to Russo, the man appeared to be in his mid-30s, wearing a dark jacket and baseball cap, and was seen helping the girl pick up something from the ground before they walked toward the parking area together. Moments later, both were gone. "At first, I didn't think much of it," Russo told investigators. "But when I saw her picture on the news, I realized it was her. That's when I knew I had to speak up." Authorities have since released a composite sketch of the man described by the witness, and are urging the public to report any information that could help identify him. Surveillance footage from nearby establishments is also being reviewed, though police say some cameras in the vicinity were not operational at the time, a setback that complicates the timeline. Detective Jennings addressed the media this morning. "This new lead gives us hope. We're now focusing on tracing the man seen with Maria. We won't stop until we find her. Meanwhile, the community continues to rally in support. Hundreds of volunteers have joined in citywide searches, distributing updated flyers featuring both Maria's photo and the sketch of the unidentified man. Social media pages dedicated to finding Maria have seen an outpouring of emotional messages, from prayers to theories, all reflecting the same sentiment. New York hasn't given up on her. As dusk falls once again on the riverside, candles flicker in the evening breeze, symbols of hope for a city still waiting, still searching, and still believing that Maria will be found. After 10 long days of searching, the case of missing 13-year-old Maria has taken a grave turn. Early this morning, investigators from the NYPD Missing Persons Unit reported that personal belongings belonging to Maria were discovered near a secluded area along the Hudson River's lower banks, roughly half a mile from the original fishing spot. Among the items recovered were Maria's handbag, a small notebook, and Detective Laura Jennings, visibly solemn at a press conference, shared limited details but emphasized progress. We have located personal effects that belong to Maria. We are currently analyzing the scene and following multiple active leads. This remains an open and urgent investigation. Meanwhile, the man in the composite sketch, seen with Maria before she vanished, is still unidentified. Though police sources suggest several new tips have emerged after the image circulated on television and social media, the discovery site has now become a gathering place for residents, who have left flowers, notes, and candles along the water's edge. Community members remain united in their hope that the young girl will be found alive and safe. Maria's family released a heartfelt statement this afternoon. Every new clue brings both pain and hope. We're praying she's somewhere, waiting to be found. Please, keep looking for our daughter. As daylight fades over the river, investigators work tirelessly under floodlights, their silhouettes reflected on the dark surface of the water, driven by one goal that continues to echo throughout the city: bring Maria home. After nearly 2 weeks of uncertainty, investigators in New York City have made a significant breakthrough in the case of missing 13-year-old Maria. Authorities confirmed late last night that they have identified a suspect believed to be connected to her disappearance, a man who matches the description and sketch provided by eyewitness Daniel Russo. The suspect, whose name has not yet been released, is reported to be a 34-year-old maintenance worker employed at a nearby marina. According to police sources, he was seen frequently in the fishing area and had reportedly spoken with Maria on previous occasions. Surveillance footage retrieved from a small gas station near the riverside, footage that had initially been dismissed due to poor lighting, shows a man resembling the suspect's build and clothing, leading a young girl toward a van around the time Maria was last seen. Detective Laura Jennings confirmed the development during a press briefing this morning. We are now working with strong evidence connecting an individual to Maria's last known location. This person of interest is currently being questioned. We remain cautious but hopeful. Authorities are also examining the suspect's residence and vehicle, which were found to contain items similar to Maria's missing belongings, including a charm keychain identical to the one her mother said she always carried. The community, which has held vigils almost nightly since the disappearance, reacted to the news with a mix of hope and anxiety. For many, this marks the first sign that the long search may soon reach a resolution. Maria's mother, surrounded by neighbors and reporters, spoke briefly outside their apartment building. We've waited every day for some sign, anything. If this leads to finding her, we'll never stop thanking those who helped us keep believing. Despite the progress, police have cautioned that Maria herself has not yet been located, and the search remains ongoing. Detectives are now coordinating with regional agencies to trace potential travel routes and contacts connected to the suspect. The Hudson waterfront, once a quiet retreat for families, remains under watch, with officers and divers continuing their sweep of the river and surrounding woods. As the city holds its breath, the case of Maria of New York edges closer to an answer, one that many hope will finally bring truth, closure, and justice to a story that has gripped hearts far beyond the river's edge. After more than 2 agonizing weeks of searching, the mystery of 13-year-old Maria's disappearance has reached a heartbreaking conclusion. Earlier this morning, authorities confirmed that Maria's body was discovered near an isolated inlet of the Hudson River, approximately 3 miles north of where she was last seen. The discovery was made by a volunteer search group early Friday, following a tip that led investigators to a narrow wooded path, often inaccessible by foot. Personal items found at the scene, including Maria's bracelet and notebook, helped police quickly identify her. Detective Laura Jennings, who led the investigation from the start, addressed the press with visible emotion. "It is with great sorrow that we confirm the recovery of Maria. Our hearts are with her family. Every officer involved in this case feels this loss deeply." Authorities have confirmed that the suspect in custody, the 34-year-old marina worker, has now been charged with abduction and homicide. Forensic evidence recovered from his van and residence, including fibers matching Maria's clothing, provided crucial links leading to his arrest. The man is currently being held without bail pending further investigation. The news has sent ripples of grief through the city. Outside Maria's school, students and teachers gathered this afternoon, leaving flowers, drawings, and handwritten notes beneath a photo of her smiling face. A candlelight vigil is planned for tonight at the riverside, where hundreds are expected to attend. Maria's parents released the case, though closed in investigation, has opened a citywide conversation about safety, vigilance, and compassion. As the sun set over the Hudson tonight, candles reflected softly on the water's surface, the same water when Maria once spent her peaceful afternoons fishing. Her story now stands as both a tragedy and a reminder that even in loss, a community's love can keep a young girl's spirit alive forever. 6 months have passed since Maria's disappearance and tragic loss, yet her presence still lingers in every corner of the community she left behind. The riverside, once a quiet fishing spot, has now become a memorial park, lovingly named Maria's Place, a peaceful space where flowers bloom and children play beneath a sign that reads, "For every child who dreams by the water." Every weekend, families visit the park to light candles or leave notes tied to the railings. The spot where Maria's handbag was once found now holds a bronze bench engraved with her favorite quote from her school journal. "Happiness is like a ripple. It always finds its way back." The case that once shook New York City has since led to real change. In response to the tragedy, lawmakers passed the Maria's Alert Act, strengthening safety protocols around public recreational areas and improving surveillance coverage near waterfronts and parks. The bill received overwhelming support, symbolizing how one young girl's story moved an entire city to act. At Maria's former school, a small scholarship fund in her name now helps young students pursue their passions in science and art, 2 subjects she loved deeply. Teachers often speak of her kindness and curiosity, remembering how she used to stay late after class, helping others with their work. Detective Laura Jennings, who led the case, visited the memorial quietly last week. When asked about Maria, she paused before saying, "Sometimes a single case stays with you forever. Maria reminded us why we do what we do, to protect the innocent, and to never stop fighting for justice." Maria's parents continue to attend the annual vigil at the river, surrounded by friends, neighbors, and strangers who became family through shared grief. Though time has moved forward, the ache remains. softened only by the love that keeps her memory alive. As dusk settles over Maria's place, the wind carries faint laughter, the kind that echoes in memory, never fading completely. Her story, once a headline of tragedy, has become one of unity, resilience, and love that endures beyond loss. And so, the city remembers her. Maria, the little girl with the charming smile, who taught New York how to hold on to hope. A year has passed since Maria's disappearance, and though the ache of her loss remains, her story has transformed into a symbol of hope and resilience across New York City. On this solemn anniversary, the Hudson River glimmers beneath the early spring sun. The same waters that once held so many unanswered questions, now reflecting hundreds of candles lit in her memory. This morning, dozens of families gathered at Maria's place, the Riverside Memorial Park created in her honor. There were no sirens, no reporters chasing headlines, just quiet songs, shared tears, and the soft sound of the river she once loved to sit beside. Maria's parents stood together near her memorial bench, their hands clasped as they watched children cast paper boats into the water, each boat carrying a handwritten message of love and remembrance. Her mother, speaking softly to those who attended, said, "We can't change what happened, but we can choose what it means." Maria's story reminds us to protect, to care, and to see every child as our own. The Maria's Alert Act, now fully implemented, has already helped locate 17 missing minors across the state. Law enforcement agencies have adopted improved surveillance systems and community reporting programs inspired by Maria's case. Detective Laura Jennings, now promoted to lieutenant, says that every success story feels like a promise kept in Maria's name. "We can't bring her back," Jennings said, "but every child we bring home safely is because she taught us where we failed and how to do better." At her former school, a mural of Maria painted by her classmates covers one entire wall, a smiling young girl surrounded by blue ripples and stars. Below, it reads a single line, "Her light still dances on the water." The city that once mourned her now celebrates her memory, not as a story of tragedy, but as a legacy of love, awareness, and change. As night falls over the Hudson, the river glows once again, candlelight flickering in the wind, whispers of prayers carried over the waves. Maria may be gone, but the compassion her story awakened continues to ripple outward. Just as she once wrote in her notebook, "Even the smallest kindness can travel farther than you'll ever see." And tonight, 1 year later, it feels as though those ripples are still moving, spreading from the river to every heart that remembers her name. 10 years have passed since Maria's disappearance, a story that once broke New York's heart and now stands as one of the city's most powerful reminders of how tragedy can spark change. What began as a desperate search for a missing 13-year-old girl has the first line of that notebook, written in Maria's careful handwriting, still inspires the organization's mission. The world feels smaller when someone cares enough to look for you. Over the years, Maria's case has been studied in law enforcement seminars, documentaries, and psychology courses focused on community response and recovery. Her story has helped redefine how early alerts, cross-state data sharing, and citizen involvement are handled in missing person investigations. Lieutenant Laura Jennings, now a senior advisor for child protection programs, reflects on how far things have come. Back in 2001, we were working with limited tools and slower systems. Maria's case forced agencies to collaborate faster, think smarter, and put compassion first. She changed how we protect our children. Every April 4th, families gather at Maria's place, the memorial park along the Hudson River. Today, the space blooms with lilies, hand-painted stones, and drawings from children who never met her but know her name. At sunset, paper lanterns are released into the sky, each carrying a message of hope. During this year's remembrance ceremony, Maria's father spoke for the first time in many years. His voice trembled, but his message was steady. "We lost one little girl, but she helped save so many others. That's how we keep her alive, through every child who comes home safe." The city remains quiet as the last lanterns rise into the twilight. Golden lights fading into the horizon, over the river that once took so much, yet now symbolizes peace. Maria's story began as a tragedy, but a decade later it lives on as something deeper. A reminder that even the smallest life can leave an unshakable mark on the world. 2 decades have passed since Maria's disappearance changed the heart of New York City forever. What began as a quiet spring afternoon by the Hudson River has become one of the most enduring stories of loss, love, and transformation in modern memory. Today, April 4th, 2021, the city once again gathers at Maria's Place Memorial Park. The river glistens beneath the morning light, surrounded by new trees planted each year in her honor. Children laugh, families walk, and life flows steadily, proof that even in sorrow, renewal always follows. Maria's legacy has grown beyond New York's borders. The Maria Foundation for Missing Children, now with offices across 15 states and partnerships in 7 countries, has helped reunite over 3,000 families with missing loved ones. Each success story bears her name quietly, whispered in gratitude by parents who once feared the same pain. In 2018, her story was adapted into a documentary film titled Light Over the Water, which won international acclaim for its emotional honesty and educational outreach. The film has since become part of awareness programs in schools and police academies, reminding future generations that vigilance and empathy can save lives. Lieutenant retired Laura Jennings, now retired but still active as a child safety advocate, attended this year's memorial. With tears in her eyes, she shared, "I still see her face when I close my eyes. The little girl with the fishing hat. We never stopped learning from her. She taught us that every case is more than a file. It's a heartbeat, a family, a future." Maria's parents, now gray-haired but graceful, sat on the same bronze bench that bears her favorite quote. Her mother placed a single daisy, Maria's favorite flower, beside her nameplate and whispered, "You're still changing the world, sweetheart." The crowd fell silent as children released 20 white balloons into the pale blue sky. One for each year since Maria's light faded from this earth, yet continues to shine in so many others. As the balloons rose, the city bells tolled softly, their echoes rolling over the Hudson, not as a sound of mourning, but of memory, resilience, and hope. Maria's story no longer belongs to tragedy alone. It belongs to everyone who believes that compassion can outlast pain, that justice can be born from loss, and that even after 20 years, the ripples of kindness still reach the farthest shores. It has been 24 years since the day New York City lost a girl named Maria, a curious, gentle 13-year-old who simply loved the river, the sound of seagulls, and the art of fishing. And yet, even now, her story continues to move quietly beneath the surface of this city, like the water she once stood beside. Every spring, the community still gathers at Maria's Place, the memorial park built in her memory. The laughter of children echoes across the riverbank as new families visit, often unaware that the space they enjoy was once the scene of heartbreak. Then they notice her plaque, the bronze words weathered by time but still clear. "Happiness is like a rickle. It always finds its way back." Those words have become a guiding phrase for child safety advocates around the world. Through the Maria Foundation, laws were changed, search systems improved, and communities learned to look out for one another again. What began as tragedy has become an ecosystem of empathy, saving lives quietly, one alert, one family, one child at a time. Maria's parents no longer speak often to the press. They live quietly now, but each April, they visit the park with fresh flowers and sit by the river. Sometimes, her mother writes new lines in the small notebook that once belonged to Maria. This year's note simply read, "Your ripples still reach us." A new generation of journalists, detectives, and teachers now tell Maria's story not as a headline, but as a lesson in humanity. How one small life can awaken a city's conscience. Documentaries, murals, and short films still revisit her case, yet they all end the same way, not with sorrow, but with light reflecting off the water. Standing by the Hudson today, the city feels different. Quieter, wiser, gentler. The same river that once carried grief now mirrors a skyline of progress and compassion. And perhaps that's how Maria would have wanted to be remembered. Not for the moment she was lost, but for everything she helped the world to find. Love, awareness, unity, and the will to care deeply, even for strangers. As the sun sets, golden ripples shimmer across the river. Somewhere in their motion, in every glimmer of light that meets the waves, the city still feels her presence. Because some stories never really end. They just keep moving forward, like light over the water. A quarter of a century has passed since a 13-year-old girl named Maria disappeared from a fishing spot on the Hudson. 25 years later, her story is no longer just a local memory. It's a thread woven through the conscience of an entire nation. Today's commemoration at Maria's Place felt more like a community festival than a vigil. Hundreds arrived, not to mourn, but to give back. Volunteers staffed missing child ID booths. Local musicians played beside the river. And students from across the city painted new murals showing children casting lines of light into the water. The Maria Foundation, once a small family initiative, has grown into an international network of crisis response teams working with authorities in over 20 countries. Through digital alert systems modeled after the original Maria's Alert Act, thousands of missing children have been located worldwide. Lieutenant-turned-Commissioner Laura Jennings, now retired, sent a recorded message for the ceremony. Maria's case taught us that tragedy can be a teacher. Every reform we made, every life saved, began because one city refused to forget a child. At the memorial bench, Maria's parents, older now but still steady in their strength, greeted visitors quietly. When asked what keeps them returning each year, her father smiled and said, "Because somewhere, another parent is still waiting. We come to remind them that waiting doesn't have to mean giving up." Near sunset, the river shimmered beneath lanterns shaped like rippling fish, a new tradition started by local schoolchildren. Each lantern carried a handwritten promise to look out for one another, to listen, to care. As the lanterns drifted downstream, the city skyline reflected in the water, just as it had 25 years ago. Only now, it gleamed with signs of progress built from compassion. Maria's story endures not because of how it ended, but because of what it sparked. A movement, a memory, and a message that caring can outlast sorrow. And as the final lantern disappeared around the bend of the Hudson, the crowd whispered the same words etched on her plaque, the words that have guided them for a generation. Happiness is like a ripple. It always finds its way back. 30 years have passed since the day the city first learned the name Maria, a bright, furious 13-year-old who went fishing by the Hudson River and never came home. In the decades since, her story has become more than an event in New York's past. It's a lesson etched into the city's heart. At Maria's Place, the park dedicated to her memory, children play where once there were searchlights and police tape. Schools now bring students here on field trips, not to frighten them with tragedy, but to teach them about kindness, safety, and empathy. Each child leaves with a small card that reads, "You are seen, you are loved, you are worth being looked for." The Maria Foundation continues to grow, its digital alert network now connected to child protection agencies across 3 continents. What began as one family's grief has become a global safety net. Countries as far as Japan and Brazil have implemented Maria protocols, early response systems inspired by the one created here in New York. This year, for the 30th anniversary, the city unveiled a bronze sculpture at the entrance to the park. It depicts a young girl reaching down toward the river's surface, her reflection cast in rippling steel. On the base are words chosen by Maria's parents, "To every child whose light guides us home." At the ceremony, Maria's mother, her voice soft but certain, addressed the crowd. Maria's story isn't about what was taken. It's about what she gave, a reminder that love is not fragile, it's powerful. It builds things that last. Commissioner Laura Jennings, now an advisor to the United Nations Child Safety Initiative, spoke too. She looked toward the sculpture and said simply, "This city learned to care better because of her." As the sun sank behind the skyline, hundreds of people lined the waterfront, releasing floating candles onto the Hudson. The glow stretched far into the distance, a constellation of memory, drifting where once a little girl used to fish. 30 years later, Maria's ripples still move outward. Through every saved child, every strengthened law, every heart that remembers to act when someone goes missing. Because some stories never truly end. They keep returning, in light, in hope, in every life touched by their echo. Maria's light still dances on the water. I have written thousands of stories in my career, about storms, elections, wars, and triumphs. But none has stayed with me like Maria's. I was there the day her face first appeared on missing posters, printed in hurried ink that blurred in the rain. She looked toward the sculpture and said simply, "This city learned to care better because of her." As the sun sank behind the skyline, hundreds of people lined the waterfront, releasing floating candles onto the Hudson. The glow stretched far into the distance, a constellation of memory, drifting where once a little girl used to fish. 30 years later, Maria's ripples still move outward. Through every saved child, every strengthened law, every heart that remembers to act when someone goes missing. Because some stories never truly end. They keep returning, in light, in hope, in every life touched by their echo. Maria's light still dances on the water. I have written thousands of stories in my career, about storms, elections, wars, and triumphs. But none has stayed with me like Maria's. I was there the day her face first appeared on missing posters, printed in hurried ink that blurred in the rain. I stood by the river when officers carried away her fishing gear, when hope flickered, when grief settled over the city like fog. I saw a mother's trembling hands clutching a photograph, and I heard a father whisper her name into the wind, as if the river might answer back. And yet, I was also there when light returned, when that same riverbank became Maria's place, filled with children, laughter, and renewal. I've watched a city grow gentler because of a girl who never made it past 13. In 34 years, I've learned that journalism is not only about reporting what happens, it's about remembering why it matters. Maria taught me that every story carries a heartbeat, and sometimes that heartbeat outlives the news cycle. Each April, I still visit the park. I sit on her bronze bench and listen to the water moving beneath the bridge. Calm, steady, endless. The world around it changes. New buildings rise, new faces appear, but the river keeps flowing, carrying forward everything it once touched. On the anniversary this year, a young girl approached me. She couldn't have been much older than Maria was back then. She asked, "Sir, were you really here when it happened?" I nodded. She smiled, holding her school project, a report titled "The Girl Who Made the City Care." Then she said something I'll never forget. "My teacher says Maria didn't just disappear. She became part of everyone who helps others now." And maybe that's the truth I've spent a lifetime trying to write. Maria didn't fade into the past. She became part of the city's pulse, part of the reason strangers still stop when someone cries for help, part of the reason parents hold their children a little tighter at night. Before leaving, I always whisper the same words that rest on her plaque. Watching the sunlight ripple across the Hudson, happiness is like a ripple, it always finds it.